The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gam Podcast Network is brought to you by Nordic Fantasy. You could win 10 times your money, and it's a ton of fun. Use the promo code SGPN to claim your special pick and a first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash on Nordic Fantasy, promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by the SGPN Mega Memorial Day merch sale. 15% off everything in the SGPN merch store with the promo code SGPNMay. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gam Podcast Network. It is currently early Saturday morning, roughly 1 a.m. Eastern Time on May 25th. I'm as always, Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Should be a fun episode, but a very short one, as it is the final episode before the French Open coverage. So we're going to be covering the final in Lyon. Now, I have to at least explain why we're not covering Geneva as well. Explanation's pretty simple. The match got rained out between Ruud and Caboli, so we can't exactly preview the final in Geneva because one of the semifinal matches ended up not getting played. We'll recap the Djokovic match in a second, but the point is, for the sake of this match, or this episode, I should say, we're not going to recover the same exact Ruud-Caboli match that we covered previously. So there's no point in actually breaking down the tournament. So they're going to have to finish that match, the semifinal match, early in the morning, and then the winner of that will have to play Makic in the final later on the same day. So we can't really cover that, so we're going to skip Geneva. Instead, we're going to move on to Lyon, who actually did complete all their matches yesterday. Before we get into any of that, though, do want to remind me once again to like, subscribe on YouTube. Also, a reminder to rate and review the podcast on Spotify or Apple. Also, a reminder that we have merchandise on the SGPN merch store. So if you do want some Tennis Gambling Podcast merch like shirts, sweatshirts, check out the SGPN website because they have a lot of great overall high-quality merchandise, not just for the tennis show, but also for all the other podcasts of the network. And there's a great promo going on right now for the Memorial Day sale, because if you end up using the promo code SGPNMay, you'll get a nice 15% off everything in the merch store. Now, a reminder, by the way, for the other shows, the featured show this week is going to be the NASCAR Gambling Podcast and the F1 Gambling Podcast, because it's a big week in racing. You have the Indy 500, you have the Monaco Grand Prix, and the Coke 600. So Rod and Cody from the NASCAR Gambling Podcast and the F1 Gambling Podcast will cover it for you. Make sure to join their Kyle Larson diecast car giveaway. It's free to enter, by the way. Just go to sportsgampodcast.com/race to register, and make sure to subscribe to the NASCAR Gambling Podcast and the F1 Gambling Podcast. So just make sure you do so. And once again, they're going to cover all of the big races for you, so you don't have to actually do any of the work, which is always nice. Now, time to start off with the recap of what happened in the semifinals for Lyon and for Geneva. Starting off with the lock on the show, it was a crazy ride, but we got there. We had Makic plus the 5.5 against Djokovic at minus 136. Very, very weird match that was very, very streaky, because you saw Djokovic immediately get off to an early lead in the first set. Djokovic was up 4-1, I believe, in the first set. So you're thinking, okay, not ideal. Maybe we'll figure it out. Then Makic came back, and he actually won the next 5 games. So he went from down 4-1 to winning the first set 6-4. So, all right, we're up a set. We're in good shape. It's pretty difficult to actually lose plus 5.5 from that point forward. And then Makic said, hold my beer. And Djokovic proceeded to win the next 6 games. Bagel. He won the second set via bagel. So suddenly we went from cruising to needing Makic to win 6+ games in the final set. If you would have lost 7-5, for example, you would have lost. You would have lost by exactly 6 games. So we needed Makic to either win the match or lose in a tiebreak. And then somehow he went from losing 7 straight games to winning the final 6 games, which is absolutely nuts. So if you're keeping score at home, that means that Djokovic won 4 of the first 5 games, then Makic won the next 5, and then Djokovic won the next 7, and then Makic won the last 6. It was a crazy up-and-down match. I really can't describe it. It was just insane to witness. Either way, though, Makic responded well after getting bageled by the best player of all time, and he was able to respond well by getting the job done 6-1, and now he's into an ATP 250 final. Now, as for Djokovic, he's entering the French Open with 0 titles, which is a disastrous year for Djokovic. He looks very underwhelming on clay, or even just in general. I know he lost a Sinner in the Australian Open, and Sinner won the event anyway, but he was getting killed in those 2 sets as well before winning the third one in miraculous fashion, and then he got killed again into the 4th set. Point is, though, Djokovic is having a very down year, and you could argue it's based on age, or maybe just based on fitness. He also got rid of his coach. He kind of switched coaches, so a lot going on right now with the Djokovic camp, and not in a good way. And we'll see if he can bounce back for the French Open. We'll save my thoughts on him, though, in the event for the French Open breakdown. As for the dog, ended up winning as we faded Bublik in the first set once again, and it got there as Pericard first set money line ended up cashing at plus 102. Believe it closed at plus 120, so you actually could have gotten a much better price if you waited closer to the start of the match, but he ended up winning in straight sets. Bublik was, I don't want to say punting the first set, but Pericard had a golden chance to go up a double break. In fact, Bublik ended up having 6 underarm serves in one service game while already down a break in the first set. And he actually won the game. Pericard could not convert, but he held on at the end, and he was able to win the first set. Then the second set was competitive before Pericard got a break late, as he won in straight sets. But if you're keeping score at home, Bublik once again, the first sets have been phenomenal. I believe right now Bublik is 7-22 in the first set this year. 7-22, and we got it at plus money. So, yeah, I'm going to keep taking it, just simply put. So, 7-22 plus money, I'll gladly take that. And Pericard got there as he was able to win the match and to make his first ever ATP final as well. So interesting set of matches that we're going to actually. So anyway, just to quickly recap the lock and dog, we had a sweep, which is very nice, and we'll try to keep it rolling here for the Saturday matches. Now, to get into the actual recap, I briefly mentioned the Djokovic stuff already. Makic was very up and down, so was Djokovic, but eventually Djokovic just seemed like the overall fitness and the court coverage was, I'd say, lacking in that third set, and it just seemed like Djokovic was kind of out of gas. We saw him struggle physically. I think it was in the Greek sport match or the Hanfin match. But the point is he really didn't look great the entire event, and that's a serious problem for Djokovic, and we'll see how he looks in the French Open. But good win for Makic. I know that we ended up fading him early in the event with Draper, and that did not work out, but we learned from it, and now Makic has cashed those back-to-back bets. I mentioned it before, but I'll say it again. Just because you lose a bet does not mean that you should not try to automatically get takeaways from it. You can learn by having a bad read on one match to have a good read on other matches. And that's my tip. We faded Makic, we faded Leheshka in Rome, and we responded by backing them a couple of times, and it worked out well. So once again, just because you might have a bad read on a player early in an event does not mean that you cannot make up that money and then some betting on the guy that you faded previously because you were wrong about an angle. That's kind of my tip there. But Makic has been really good, and he was able to beat Djokovic. As for the other match I did not mention in Lyon, it was Echeverry who ended up burying Darderi in straight sets. Thought that was going to be the case. I know we had Darderi to win the event, but I wasn't overly impressed by how he played in the first couple rounds. Yes, he got by. Faced off, though, against Manarino. That was competitive. Faced off against Daniel. That was competitive. Really did not look great against pretty weak competition. Echeverry, though, has been the best player in the event, and he looked really good as he ended up winning in straight sets. So overall, we got basically everything right. The one match that was missing was the Ruud and Cavoli match, which got rained out. They'll finish that match, or start that match, I should say, on Saturday morning. But that's going to do it for the actual recap of the semis. Once again, swept the lock and dog picks, and we also liked Echeverry in straight sets. And I think it was plus 180 yesterday as a kind of a bonus dog, which we did not officially give out. But overall, very good episode. So hopefully we'll keep it rolling there for the finals. Before we get into the actual final in Lyon, do want to remind you once again that we are brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is definitely trying to make the NBA playoffs more interesting, and they have a lot of great options with their pick'em game. It's a simple selecting higher or lower on player stats like points, rebounds, assists, and so much more. It's also the easiest place to play fantasy sports. You can make entries of all basketball or mix and match across your favorite sports. You can win a ton of times your money. It's a ton of fun. It's also available in Canada, in Texas, California, and 30 plus states. You could also find a lot of great options for tennis. They have breaks of serve, double faults. They have a lot of fantastic options for tennis to make tennis viewing more interesting. And a reminder that they have a lot of great promos for the NBA playoffs. They have bonus cash airdrops, they have specials, giveaways, and more. So make sure to follow at Underdog Picks on Twitter to keep an eye out. It's available in 30 plus states, including California, Texas, and Canada. They also just launched Champions, their player versus player format in Florida. Sign up with the promo code SGPN to claim your special pick and a first-time deposit offer of $200 in bonus cash on Underdog Fantasy. Promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished recapping our very profitable Friday. Now it's time to move on into the Saturday card. Once again, only one match. If you want my thoughts on the Ruud Cavoli match, I covered it in the last episode. They didn't play, so we're not going to go through it. As for this match, should be interesting because you're going to see history no matter what happens, because both guys in the event are looking for their first ever ATP title. Echeverry has somehow never won an ATP title. I think he's talented than other guys who have won titles before, but Echeverry's been around the block a few times, and he has yet to win one. So I think he might be the most talented player on tour to never win an ATP title, and he's going to try to change that on Saturday. Now, as for Pericard is a relative unknown, or at least for most people if you don't follow the Challenger circuit. Very young, but very talented. He is 6'8". He has a very big serve, solid one-handed backhand as well, but he's also 20. So he's definitely young. Could be a next up-and-comer for France. I know Fils has some up-and-coming potential, even though his year's been terrible. Humbert can have some potential there. But you're going down the line, and it does seem like Perricard can be a very solid French player for years to come. I'm trying to think of a fair comparison because the games don't stack up identically because of the one-handed backhand. I see a little bit of Sanga in his game. I think that his serve is definitely powerful. He has good overall strokes. The movement, I don't think is as good as Sanga's. I think Sanga is one of the more underrated players over the last, I'd say, decade and change. But I do think there are some similarities, and I do think that his firepower can translate well to either clay, maybe even grass, or maybe even hard court. He's going to be good, and I think that you should keep an eye on him moving forward. Either way, though, point is he, of course, has never won an ATP title either because he's only 20, and he's not spent much time playing on the ATP Tour. So one of the guys are going to win a title. I'm rooting for Etcheverry personally. He's been around the block for a long time. He has yet to win one, and I like him. I have nothing against Perricard either, but he's young. He'll definitely win an ATP title at some point. Etcheverry, though, I've been kind of waiting for him to win one, and it would be nice to see him win one. So we'll see what happens in this match. As for the actual odds, Etcheverry is a massive favorite. He's around minus 240. Perricard is plus 200. For the game spread, Etcheverry minus 2.5 games is minus 127, and Perricard to cover plus 2.5 games is a plus 107. Over-under set at around 23 or 23.5. If you want to find the set wagering, Etcheverry in straight sets is plus 120. Perricard to win ace set is minus 145. Over 2.5 sets is plus 140. I also have some niche props. I have aces, breaks of serve, and double faults. For aces, I see Etcheverry at 4.5. Over is minus 135. Under is plus 105. Perricard over 8.5 aces is minus 115. Under 8.5 aces is minus 115 as well. Combined aces is set at 14.5. As for the breaks of serve, combined, it's 2.5, minus 135 on the over, plus 105 to the under. For individual breaks, Etcheverry over 1.5 is minus 150, under 1.5 is plus 120. Perricard to break one time is minus 170, and Perricard to not break a single time in the match is plus 140. And for the double faults, you have over 4.5 combined. Over is minus 135. Under is plus 105. And for the double faults for the players, you have Perricard over 3.5 at minus 110. And you have Etcheverry over 1.5 at plus 135. The under for Etcheverry 1.5 is a minus 165. Now, they've never faced off before. They go through the actual path of these players. Even though Perricard has been solid, he also did have a walkover in there against Nishioka. So I have to at least point out his competition has not been that great. Did beat Sonego in the first round. I've mentioned it many times. Sonego has been awful so far this year. So a good win there, but I have to at least acknowledge the context, which is Sonego being in really bad form. Then he had a walkover against Nishioka in the second round. Then he beat Gaston in 3. Gaston was a challenger or a qualifier, I should say, who made a good run. But the point is pretty, I don't want to say weak competition, but a favorable option to face off against in the quarterfinals of a tournament. And then in the last match, he faced off against Bublik, who we know is not exactly the greatest clay court player. As for Etcheverry, he's been solid. He got buried in the first set by a relative unknown in Sanchez, but ended up coming back to winning the next 2 sets 6-2, 6-2. Then he flipped the switch. Ended up beating Seaboth Wild 7-5, 3-0. He was up once again, at least a break in the second set, so the match was probably over, but he won via retirement. Then he beat Kempfer 6-4, 6-1, killed him, and then he faced off against Darderi in the match on Friday, and he won 6-2, 6-4. So ever since dropping the first set against a relative unknown, his first set in the event, he's won 8 straight sets. So I think Etcheverry's been in better form. I think 240 could argue is a bit steep. I think he should be closer to like 2-1, maybe minus 180, minus 190. I think he should be a pretty sizable favorite. He's very comfortable on clay. He's the more experienced player. Perricard is still an unknown. I know that the home country crowd advantage is going to help him, but I do have to point out that it is going to be a big moment for him, the biggest match of his career, and I do think he might be in line to maybe struggle in moments in some big spots. Is he going to get killed in this match? I didn't say that. If Etcheverry won in straight sets, I wouldn't be shocked. But I do think that Perricard's serve can cause problems, and I do think that he can potentially make this match competitive and maybe go 3 sets. Over 2.5 sets of plus 140, I don't hate. I think if I had to choose between the two of them, between Etcheverry straight sets of plus 120 and the over 2.5 sets at plus 140, I probably would lean to Etcheverry straight sets. I really do think there is a talent disparity between these two, but Perricard's good, and maybe if the serve can be on, he can outlast you could outlaws Echeverry, maybe capitalize on Echeverry's weak serve and get the job done. I do think Echeverry's going to win, though. The issue is finding value with minus 240. So I am going to lean to the straight sets of plus 120. I don't mind the games, though. You can find minus 2 for Echeverry at minus 140. But I do have some plays that I am going to give out as my favorite plays at the end of the show. I'm going to save those, though, for after the break. But I do think for this match, I think it's time for Echeverry to win one. We've seen Katchen win one. We've seen long shots win one. I think Quan is 2, for example. A couple of guys who you are kind of surprised that actually have won titles have, and some guys have not. Echeverry, I think it's time to end the dry spell. Let's get the job done, and let's win in the final of Lyon before the French Open. Besides that, though, it's going to wrap it up for or win the final right before the French Open. Time to move on, though, into the actual lock and dog picks of the show. Before into that, though, do want to remind you once again that we are brought to you by Rhythm. It's the NBA playoffs. I'm sure a lot of you were watching the Mavericks and Timberwolves game 2. Shout out to Luka for the crazy three-pointer at the end. If you're betting on the player props, though, then you need to download Rhythm, because Rhythm gives you a menu of the best player props for every single NBA playoff game, making it easy to go through and to find the best props to put your money on in seconds. Rhythm predictions are backed by over 3 years of data and a team of data scientists and quants that focus on fine-tuning the algorithm to give you the best chance at winning. Rhythm pairs its predictions with player prop graphs, and they also can help you make you feel more confident in your picks, whether it involves your bets or DFS. From superstars to bench players, they have player prop lines all backed by AI data, so you never really need to scroll through a sportsbook. They have the lines right in front of you. Rhythm also gives you the opportunity to create your own NBA model, so you can get AI-backed money line spread and total picks for every playoff game. Start a free 7-day trial and start winning your NBA player props with Rhythm, available wherever you do get your podcast. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished previewing the final in Lyon. Now it is time for the lock and dog picks. For the lock, I am going to admit I'm going to break a rule. Usually on the show, I try not to give out an insane minus price, and I try to cap myself at around minus 160, unless there's a play that I really like. 160 is usually the ceiling that I'll go for a minus price, and everything will be underneath it. For this episode, I have a 170. And the reason why I have a 170 is because I found a trend that is just too good to pass up on. And it's going to be in the niche prop market. It's going to be on the breaks of serve market. And it's going to be Pericard to break Echeverry at least one time over half a break at minus 170. Now, it's very niche, but hear me out. I'm going to explain why minus 170 is actually way off. It should be, in my opinion, over 2-1. To go with Echeverry numbers in the matches here, he did not get broken against Darderi in the last match, but he has allowed at least 7 breakpoint opportunities in 3 of his 4 matches. So if you toss up the Darderi match, Kepfer had 15 breakpoint chances against him. Seaboth Wild had a bunch of chances as well, and Sanchez did as well. So the point is, he has not exactly been a good server recently in the event, and I do think that the great showing yesterday is an outlier. I think that going through his overall history would tell you that Pericard should get at least a couple of breakpoint chances here, and I think as a result, you're looking at what could be a very, very solid bargain at minus 170. But if you don't believe me, I actually pulled up all the numbers. Echeverry this year has played 30 matches in 2024. If I asked you how many of those 30 matches you think Echeverry has not been broken in, how many of those 30? The answer is 20. To go through, he has been broken a total of 2 times out of those 30 matches. 2 times, or rephrase, out of the 30 matches he's played in, he has not been broken in 28 of the 30 matches. And one time, the prop actually got voided. He faced off against Mo, and Mo actually got injured and ended up having to retire. So that actually cancels. In fact, there were 3 matches that ended early with retirements. The other 2, there was a break of serve in there. But if you wanted to toss those out as well, Echeverry's played 27 completed matches this year. 27 full matches, no retirements. He's been broken at least one time in 26 of those 27 matches. It's minus 170. 26 of 27. He's been broken at least one time. I got to take it. Minus 170 is too good of a price. We saw Pericard break a couple times against Bublik. I think you might get one service game, maybe a couple, where Echeverry misses some first serves. Not known for being a good server anyway. And Pericard does have some firepower, which can allow him to push Echeverry around and to force him to play defensively. Point is, though, when you have a trend this good, 30 matches with at least one break in 28 of them, And one of the exceptions was a match that got ended in the beginning of the second set. It's a great deal. I got to take it. 170 is a great price. And Perricard has been good at breaking so far in the event. He has broken at least one time in each of his first 3 matches in Lyon because he had the walkover in one of them. So only 3 matches instead of 4. That's going to be the lock. For the dog, I am going to go with another niche prop. I am going to go with no tie breaks at plus 120. Etcheverry has had 0 tie breaks in 6 of his last 7 matches, 0 tie breaks in this event. So he has been ending sets quickly. And I think that's going to be the case once again here in this match. Maybe a 6-4 in there, maybe a 7-5 even. But when you have Etcheverry with no tie breaks in 6 of his last 7 matches, 0 breaks in 0 breakers in the event, and you're looking at Perricard, who's had 0 tie breaks in 11 of his last 13 matches, including 0 breakers in this event. When both guys have had 0 tie breaks in the entire event, and I can get no tie break in the final at plus 120. I'm going to take it. Plus 120 is an insane price. I get the argument is that Perricard's a good server. I understand that. But I have to go with the overall numbers in their individual matches. And when you have that few amount of breakers in each of their individual matches over the last couple of weeks, and I can get no breaker again at plus 120, that's too good to pass up on. So I am going to go with that as my dog. So once again, 2 niche plays for the lock and dog pick for the lock. I am going to go with Perricard over, half a break at minus 170. Apologies, it's juiced. But once again, the trend speaks for itself. I got to take this. I think this price should be closer to minus 200. For the dog, I am going to go with no tie break at plus 120. Once again, mentioning the recent form of both guys, really no breakers between them. So I think that this price is way off. That's going to wrap it up, though, for this episode. A reminder, for the next episode, we have French Open coverage, but we have a bonus episode. We have 2 episodes coming out on Saturday because we are going to be covering the Women's French Open. In fact, we might have an actual guest. It's not officially confirmed yet, but we might have a guest on the show to cover the WTA. So we're going to do the same thing we do for the men. We're going to cover the tournament outrights, covering the quarters, all that stuff, and the draw. So we're going to have that episode. Then the men's French Open episode will be later that day. But we should have 2 episodes for tennis for the French Open. So stay tuned for that. Busy tennis gambling podcast day tomorrow, so stay tuned and check your notifications. Until next time, though, find me on Twitter at Reichel Radio. Find me on the NBA show. Find me on the MLB show. Find me on the NFL show, WNBA show as well. Until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.